Welcome to Part 8. In this section, we're going to consider the scale layer. Scales determine how data are mapped to aesthetic attributes. So you have aesthetics, such as color, but a scale will determine just how that color is going to appear. One scale is needed for every aesthetic property in a layer. Default scales are often defined so that we don't need to consider every aesthetic property. That is, you can often not put in a scale and things will look just fine. But sometimes you want to adjust and the scale will help you do that. So even though you need, like the second bullet says here, a scale for every aesthetic property, the idea is because defaults are set, just like default arguments in a function, we don't always have to give the argument a value because the function will have a default. Same is true of scale. Scales can control aesthetic attributes like shape, size, and color. Scales can also control whether a dimension should be seen as categorical or discrete. So let's do some playing around with scales. We'll consider the scales layer that lets us consider possible scale adjustments. Scales control how a plot maps data values to visual values of an aesthetic. So take a look at this plot in which again I have displacement and highway. I didn't add a color in for the type of vehicle this time, so it's a very simple scatter plot in which we have displacement on the x-axis, highway on the y. Here's a scale that will take and reverse the x-axis. So notice we're going from high displacement to low displacement. That, of course, changes the look of this from a negative relationship to a positive simply because we reverse the scale of displacement. Let's see some scaling with a bar graph. So here's a simple bar graph. This is showing us the count of vehicles in each class. Now suppose we want to put in our own colors. We can do that with a scale layer. So scale, remember, is how the aesthetics appear. Well, the aesthetic here that I'm interested in is this fill aesthetic. And so we're going to use fill manual, meaning we're going to supply our own colors and we're going to put in our own colors. There they are. Here it is again, but this time I'm going to use a fill that instead of is manual, I'm going to use a particular defined color palette other than the default palette. This one is called Brewer. And Brewer has a number of palettes available. I'm going to use the first set of Brewer. Where would we find these? We could find these online. We could find these in cheat sheets. So you could look up some professionally designed or at least pre-designed, it might be probably a professional statistician rather than a designer, a pre-designed set of palettes, and then you pick which set that you want. So let's see what it looks like here with the Brewer set. There's the first Brewer set colors. Scales can be used to control size, shape, and fill color. So let's go back again to my simple plot. And so here, what we're putting in are actually scales. I want the size to be 3 times. I want shape 23, which again, we could look up what that means. And I want the fill color to be red. And so here we are with points that are 3 times the size. We're using diamonds, which is shape 23, and we're filling them with red. We are using geom points, so the default scale is continuous for both x and y. Even so, sometimes we want to explicitly use the scale continuous function for one or both dimensions. For instance, what if I want to override the scale defaults? So here I'm going to say that the scale of y, look at line 70, the scale of y is going to be continuous, but I want to set the limits of that scale to be from 0 to 80. So that overrides the default, and this is what we get. Not very nice. I would prefer that we use the default in this case, but I'm showing you that you can override it. Okay, so you've seen here how we can use some scales. You can look at your cheat sheet. Try to say that quickly 5 times. Cheat sheet. You can use your cheat sheet in order to look up additional scales and scale properties. And I'm going to obviously give you a chance to explore those and show off your exploration in some of your assignments. I'll see you back for the next topic, which is going to be looking at the coordinate system layer.